All right, everybody, how's it going? I thought I'd do another video here talking about One D&D or sixth edition, whatever you want to call it. Kind of a couple of things I've been thinking about whether or not it succeeds or fails, right? Um, just sort of three main things I've been thinking about. Um, basically, what I think will sort of determine whether or not this edition sinks or swims. Right? Does it happen like fourth edition, where it spawns all sorts of stuff? Um, Probably the number one thing aspect that people are talking about that has everybody kind of fussy is the monetization of the game, right? How are they going to monetize it? They've got this new person in charge who's very, we'll say corporate, right? And wants to do what corporations are want to do, which is monetize things, especially video game type stuff. So what I think is going to happen here is that most of the new sort of avenues of monetization are going to come through the online sort of portals, right? That they're going to have. I suspect you're going to be looking at a very much something like Roll20 that's updated and controlled by Wizards of the Coast, where you'll be able to customize it, as a player, as a DM, for what backgrounds you want, what miniatures you want. You probably have to buy some, and you buy a packet for like 20, and you can use them as your miniatures for the game. Stuff like that, right? It's going to be those kind of things. Now, there's also like maybe going to be some player stuff, right, where they can be, customizing their PCs, maybe customizing what access they have to certain books, right? Digital access to books, which would suck. I think that'll be a bad idea, but that's probably what they'll do, right? If you want to be able to use, D&D Beyond and have some sort of special new Duskblade class, you're going to have rights to that book for it to program it in there, right? Now, whether or not these things are a hit, monetization can be really annoying, but sometimes as long as they're providing you value, right? It's not necessarily a terrible thing, right? Like if you pay, I don't know, $10, $15 a month and you get a whole bunch of stuff and you can customize, if you're a DM and you want to use this new platform and they include a bunch of stuff, as long as you pay a monthly fee, that might work out, right? If it's stuff like, God forbid, like random loot boxes or something that you pay for, like that will be terrible, right? Or that will sort of instantly make everybody hate it. And God forbid, a pay to win sort of system, right? So what you actually get for your money is going to matter, right? Like you might be willing to buy a pretty cool miniature for $3 or $4, but being able to have a blue skin for your cape that was red for $5 is probably going to annoy a lot of people, right? So how they go about monetizing it is going to matter a lot, whether it provides value, whether it pisses people off, right? So that's the first one. I think said everything's probably not everything, but most of the monetization is going to be through some new online offerings, right? Which is kind of interesting. Could be cool, could not. Maybe it won't be. Who knows? Second important aspect, and this one is really important, right? This is the sort of key feature of all new editions. Now, a lot of people are, got into D&D with 5th edition, so this is like your first change of edition, right? For everybody else, especially us that have been playing since like the 80s and the mid 80s, it's like we've been here and done this many, many times. So what's going to happen is that as the new system rules roll out, people will start playing them. Some people will jump on board right away and be like, I want to check out this new stuff. And other people will hold back, right? And some people will just never switch. Like, I don't care what you do. I'm happy with my 5th edition and I don't see any reason to get rid of it. And as new people adopt the system and begin playing it, you'll get to find out whether or not that system is quote unquote good, right? And when I say good, what it has to be is that whatever 6th edition is, D&D 1 or whatever, it has to be sufficiently different from 5th edition to justify its creation, its existence, right? Otherwise, it could just be 5.5, right? This has to be different, and it has to be different enough, right, to justify a change, right? A new edition, you going out and buying new books, right? But, and sort of most importantly, it has to be good, and people have to enjoy playing it, because if they don't, then they're not going to adopt it, right? And it seems like a very sort of simple point, but to wit, it's harder to do than you think. And this is something you noticed with fourth edition, right? Fourth edition really revamped the rules. Like, it was totally different from third edition. And it was actually a very functional game, right? It had the rules were generally good, right? As far as, not being too crunchy. They worked, it sort of worked within its system. It was a very playable game. It flowed smoothly. And for me and a lot of people, the problem was it all felt very, I don't know what the word is here. Like, everything felt the same, right? All the classes felt the same. It was almost too balanced, right? They focused so hard on making sure that no class was, too good and than another class, or had more abilities or whatever, that they created a game where all the classes were basically interchangeable, right? And then you had these healing surges that nobody liked, because then you didn't even really need priests, right? And they changed the game, but it just didn't work, right? And nobody liked playing it. And as I did play it a couple times, and I decided I just didn't like it, and I went back to third, right? And eventually Pathfinder. But a lot of people played it and stayed playing it, and a lot of people played it and just dumped it, right? And it takes some time, right? Maybe a couple of years, 2 or 3 years, before people jump into it and then jump back out, and then the word just sort of spread that fourth edition sucked, right? And it was one of the shorter editions that they ever had. It was a flop, right? Basically, right? So the point is, I guess, is that you have to offer something different, right? And fourth edition did that, but it wasn't good, and so it flopped, right? So sixth edition, One D&D has to be different, right? They can't just remake fifth edition, but they have to somehow make it good enough. I won't say necessarily better than fifth edition, but it has to be good enough to where people still enjoy playing it, right? It has to be new and good, right? That seems like a simple point to make, but it is the critical point, right? If nobody enjoys playing it, it's not going to go very far. So lastly, the third point has to do with sort of third-party market and DMs and creators, right? Fundamentally, this is what people are, the creative people, right? The people who are making money off of the OGL, the Open Gaming License, and fifth edition, are the most worried about. Is like, what rights do they have? Like, I published a little bit on drivethrurpg. I chose not to go on DM's Guild because I didn't like that you can't republish it anywhere else, right? And then they own it, basically, right? So now I'm a very small creator, but I just didn't like that. So I'm going to keep my, $100 a year that I make to myself, right? Rather than having to give Wizards of the Coast, a bigger chunk and then not have the rights to my own stuff, right? I like retaining the rights. But the point is that third-party market, because fifth edition is born in a time where things have really changed from when D&D was, back in the day, right? Is that in terms of content, the third-party market is just vastly bigger than anything that Wizards of the Coast could ever hope to put out, right? It's just this ocean of, some of it's total schlock, but there's tons of content. And ultimately, the people who run the games, like Dungeons and Dragons, still remains a sort of it's sort of a function of how many people are willing to run the game, right? DMs. If you don't have DMs, you don't have game, right? So at the end of the day, it's DMs who choose the system, right? And they're the ones who are also doing all the creating of content. So this has shifted the sort of way we DMs approach D&D dramatically, right? And that I don't think, well, any DM who's been playing for probably more than 5 years is probably out there looking at tons of other content, right? And has created their own content. A lot of people are creating their own because they have been for years, and now they're just like, well, I've created all this stuff. Why not try to make money off of it? And if Wizards of the Coast sort of cuts you off from the ability to make money on it, right? You'll just go sell it somewhere else. And that sort of pool of DMs isn't going to stick with Dungeons and Dragons, right? They're going to go to where all the content is, and they'll start running other games, right? And it'll sort of shrink what is Dungeons and Dragons, right? Because fifth edition as it is, there's the official Wizards of the Coast stuff, but there's tons of stuff out there that is compatible with it, right? So what if you want to call the size of the game, the content for it is just immense. And ultimately, if they piss all those people off, the content that is available to you in sixth edition shrinks, maybe dramatically. So it means that DMs will go look at where we go looking for content, right? New ideas, new stuff. There's always rules we don't like. There's stuff we incorporate, and we're always pilfering from other systems, right? And so all those DMs will go to other systems, right? And that's an easier option today than it's ever been. And if nobody's running your game, nobody's buying the books, and nobody's playing it, and you're not making money, right? So that's basically the long and the short of it. Just three things. I probably think more. I really got into it, but those are the three things I think that you can look at to see if One D&D is going to succeed or not. If it screws those things up, it's probably not going to excel. We'll say it might still make money. Now they can lose some market share and still make money. That is the reality. Maybe even make more money, right? Depending on how they choose to monetize and how successful they are. So they could lose half their player base, but still make twice as much money. And if that's the case, they're going to be very willing to do that, right? So we'll see what happens. I guess on the final note, you don't have to play it. That's the one thing that's carried down through all the editions. Like, you don't have to play it. There's nobody forcing you to go out and buy the new books. So there's plenty of DMs running older games today, and they will continue. And there's going to be a huge pool of people that are just going to keep playing fifth edition forever, right? Just from now until they die, they're just going to stick with fifth edition because that's what they know. So as a player, you don't really have to worry about any of this stuff. You don't have to play it. I mean, it's fine, right? It's just what happens naturally whenever a new edition comes out. So that's my take on it. I will see you next time.